I think so many people that are born in the US have no idea how good they have it. When I left my corporate job, I said, what do I want out of life, right? And the answer wasn't like, I just want a whole bunch of money. It was, I no longer want to work for other people. And I no longer want to be a consumer. I want to be a creator. Entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can live the rest of your life the way most people can.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Jack Bosch Show, where we talk about all things real estate and finance. And today we have a very special guest, immigrant just like me, well, from another place in the world, but another example of how immigrants rock it. And this is Mr. Daniil Kleyman. Hey Daniel, how are you today?
Good. What's up, Jack?
Good. Now, Daniel does a ton of different things. You do ground-up construction. You have educational things doing, like including software and so on. You're doing your dad. You have the immigration story. I mean, we're going to dive into all of it. And particularly, like for those who listen to us a lot, you're probably going to be very interested in the ground-up construction kind of world, because you're building beautiful things from ground up, from taking the land raw and developing it, and all the way vertical, which very few people do. And but I'm also interested about your story. So let's start with your story a little bit, because obviously, so tell us a little bit about what's going on, who you are, and how it all came about.
Nobody knows how it all came about, Jack. I'm still trying to figure that out. How far back do you want me to take the story?
Like the short version, but like, I mean, obviously you came in as a child from former communist Greater Russia, right? Not necessarily Russia, but a different part, right?
Yeah, it was the Soviet Union. I was 12 when we immigrated here. It was right after the wall fell. So I'll date myself here, but we came in 92. Now I was 12 years old. So I remember living in Soviet Union vividly. I remember standing when I was 7, 8 years old on a regular basis, standing in bread lines. You know, people think bread lines are like this euphemism that Republicans love to use to like scare people against socialism. No, like I stood in actual lines for bread on a regular basis when I was a child, 3-4 hour lines.
And we're not talking about the line around the block for the best bakery in town that just is very popular. No, just to get a piece of bread somewhere, right?
Right, just rye bread. You had a choice. You had a choice. You could choose any bread you wanted as long as it was rye bread.
Right. That's crazy. I mean, I was in Moscow in 1991, and I still saw some of these things happening. Literally, I was hosted by a family there. We were there with a band, with an orchestra, and we were all hosted in private kind of places. And every day, grandma was sent to town with basically with her purse full of money to just go buy whatever she can find, because you can always trade whatever she could find with somebody else against something they found. Is that?
I still have, when we immigrated here, I found this recently. You know, everybody has like a box of weird stuff from their childhood that they haven't opened in 20 years. And I looked through, I found this box in my parents' house of random things from my teenage years. And I brought over actual food vouchers. My family would get weekly food coupons that we would use because they were rationing bread and basic goods. And again, this is not like Soviet Russia in the 1920s when they were just figuring out socialism, right? This is like 70 years later. And at the end of it, they still couldn't figure it out. 70 years later, they still couldn't figure out how to feed people and deliver basic necessities to them. So yeah, so I grew up there. I remember living there vividly. I remember lines for food and for basic necessities, and I remember the culture shock of coming here when I was 12 years old, and we moved to Virginia. So we immediately went from Moscow to suburbia America, and like so it was like landing on a different planet. People were like strangers were smiling at us, which in and of itself was absolutely strange. Because in Russia, like nobody smiled in general, and strangers definitely wouldn't smile at you. And I remember the first time when I was 12 years old, I walked into an American grocery store, And it was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It's just aisles and aisles, shelves stocked with food and no lines and people fighting over it. And it was like we literally just landed in a different planet. So I
Oh.
remember all that stuff vividly, and gives me an appreciation for kind of basic things in life that my kids will never understand, unfortunately.
Yeah, did that appreciation ever go away, or you still remember it? I mean, you obviously still remember it, but did that kind of wane off over time and it got normalized, or you still have moments where you go back to that?
Well, no, of course, it normalizes. We as humans have a very easy time adjusting to improvements in life and making that the new normal. We have a very hard time adjusting our standards of living down and getting used to that. So, no, of course, on a regular basis, I no longer walk through grocery stores like,
Of course, yes. Whoa!
this is amazing. But I still have that memory. And so occasionally I do remind myself of kind of where we came from and just how good we have it, but also how easy it is to lose those things.
Yeah, yeah, it made you really aware. And then I know we're not only do we know each other for like something like 10 plus years, but I also see your very funny Facebook posts on a regular basis. And when you kind of make it a point either to call out some people, but also call out some situations about that is like because you bring that memory with you. There's like guys, you don't even have a clue what you're talking about when you talk about when certain things that you want socialism or you want certain things because you have lived in it and you know how the sad reality of it. So with that said, though, let's move into. So you come here, you're 12 years old, you grow up, and we fast forward to today. How has your life changed?
Well, I no longer stand in lines for bread, that's for sure. I came here. We're immigrants, right? So my parents obviously prioritized getting good grades in school, getting into a good college. I got a degree in finance. I left college. I worked on Wall Street for 6 years. I had a string of fairly prestigious jobs, trading bonds on Wall Street, and then I was structuring bond deals. And in the Great Recession of 2008, that all kind of came to an end. My corporate career ended. And at that point, I really just wasn't into it anymore anyway. I was really in it for the money. And luckily for me, the Great Recession happened and I got laid off because who knows how many more years I would have stuck around there just for the money, doing work I really wasn't meant to be doing things I really was not meant to do. So 2008, I went into business for myself. I got into real estate full time, and I started a software development business as well. And just been waking up and going to work every day since then and having a lot of fun, right? And the difference is I get to create things now, which is very personally fulfilling to me. That was kind of a big when I left my corporate job, I said, what do I want out of life, right? And the answer wasn't like I just want a whole bunch of money. It was I no longer want to work for other people, and I no longer want to be a consumer. I want to be a creator. I want to be the person on the other end creating things that other people consume. That was kind of a big thing for me. And so those are the criteria around which I sort of built my career since then. I said I want to create things that are going to make an impact on people's lives and help people. But yes, coincidentally, in our society, the creators and the producers also happen to do better financially than the consumers and the worker bees. Those are just simple facts.
Yeah, absolutely. The consumers, well, they consume. Then there's what the participants, well, they participants, but the creators and the owners are making all the money. Right. Yeah. If you look at
Yeah,
that,
and rightfully so, right? Because that's the kind of society that drives. It's all about incentives, right? And so in this society, there are proper incentives set up for people to innovate, to create, to risk capital, and you get rewarded for creating things that ultimately the market rewards people that create things that actually help people. So yeah, so now I get to create buildings. I get to create software. We have a real estate education company just like you do, which helps a lot of people. And that's been very personally rewarding to me.
Wonderful. So let's talk about that. Let's go first into the building part of it. So you specialize, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, based on what I know about you, in more in infill lots and either in residential or mixed use kind of development.
That's correct. So yeah, I don't do raw land development. We do infill development, which simply means that I buy typically either existing lots or I subdivide a larger piece of land into existing lots, but there's already utilities at the street, there's already roads. So I'm not doing raw land development where I'm subdividing land, building new roads, bringing utilities and infrastructure in, which from a development standpoint, infill development is simpler from that standpoint. And what we specialize is in multifamily or mixed use development. So either apartments or apartments with a commercial component in those buildings.
So what's the largest piece that you have built so far?
The largest that I've physically done so far, 2 weeks ago, we broke ground on a 45,000 square foot project. So it's 40 apartments and 8,000 square feet of commercial. So that's physically the largest one I've done so far. I've got one in permitting now that's 130 units, and that likely at this point breaks ground next year.
Oh wow! So you're actually having things in permitting in spite of the interest rates and all the things that are happening right now. How do you calculate? Like, let's talk about that a little bit. Like currently, we're obviously it's early 2014 right now. It is interest rates are a little bit down from where they were, but they're still 100% higher probably than they were, or 50 to 80 to 100% higher than they were just like a year ago. How do you like? Are you in such a high-priced market that development still makes sense in spite of those things, or how does that still make sense? Because most people I talk in the construction area, they're currently just not building. I mean, they're finishing what they built, what they broke ground on because they have the loan and they need to get it going and they need to finish it up, but they're not submitting new permits. They're not going into that part, which actually might lead to some shortage down the road again in product. But you seem to be exception on that. What's your thinking around that?
Well, I mean, in my market, there's a bunch of projects breaking ground. We are not in a super high rent market like Raleigh, Austin, Denver. Well, I'm in Richmond, Virginia. We're probably in the mid-tier market, but deals pencil out. But right now, deals don't pencil out amazingly, but deals pencil out to where they're doable, right? This is not an environment where money is cheap. This is not an environment where construction costs are cheap. The key to get deals done in this environment, I think, is having low land basis and making sure that you're buying land correctly. And we've gotten pretty good at that and creating value out of land through various rezonings, special use, conditional use permits, variances. And so I'm still able to make deals pencil out, but they certainly don't pencil out as good as they did 2 years ago when rates were at 3.5%. But that being said, if I can still make deals pencil out to a bare minimum rate of return that I require, I'm still going to do them because long-term I'm bullish in the market. And these are all long-term plays, right? Like the wealth in these types of deals is created. I hold everything I build and I plan to hold it for the rest of my life. And real wealth in these deals is created over time.
Okay, that's an interesting concept. So you're actually not buying and building and then selling. You're buying, building, and holding. That is.
For the most part, I've got a spec home building part of my business where we build spec houses and sell them to owner occupants. But that's not a huge part of my business. The multifamily and mixed use buildings that I'm building, I'm keeping for cash flow. I'm keeping for appreciation. I'm taking depreciation of those things almost, we accelerate depreciation off the bat and use that to offset a lot of other incomes. So, I mean, there's a lot of benefits of these projects beyond just the cash flow that we're going to get from them when the project is built.
So let's go into the land game here a little bit, because you said something interesting that is obviously, like, if you get the land basis low and you've gotten really good at that. So when you say, so you're finding lots that as they are, the market value might be X, but once you get certain conditional use permits and things like that, that elevates the land thing. So you're paying you're not chasing people down and trying to get them at 50 cents on the dollar. You're just basically finding lots that potentially have some issues that you think you can overcome and build value that way. Is that about right? Or
So I've got deals in the last 2 years, multiple deals that I've done where I gave the seller a 50% premium over what their property was worth. But by the time I got done upzoning that land, the value of that land was double what I was paying the seller.
right. So you
So
still
so
end
think
up
so think about that. He got paid a premium and I doubled my money before I ever even closed on the land or put shovels in the ground.
I love that. I had conversations with some of our students recently about exactly that. And it's like, if you want to get into the development space, just offer them more than even asking. If you reasonably expect the value after rezoning to be much higher, because you don't have to squeeze them. Because we come out of the land flipping, the land wholesaling world, where the goal is always to get it as cheap as possible. But once you get into the development space, it's a completely different game. You got to think about it a different way. So thank you for bringing this up, because that's a great example.
I mean, look, that's what makes, to me, that's what makes development and that's what makes land fun, right? When you're looking at a single family home, 10 people can look at that single family home and their idea of the after repair value is going to be fairly similar, right? Somebody's going to renovate this house. Let's look at the comps. It's going to be worth $500,000. But 10 people can look at a piece of land and envision 10 different things going up there, right? And if I envision something bigger being built there, and if I know how to execute it, either by some kind of upzoning or taking advantage of a building code or some kind of a variance, then my as-built value is going to be much higher than somebody else looking at it, which means I can pay more to the seller than another person. And so there's a huge divergence in how people are going to look at land compared to single family houses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, love that. That's great value add here for our audience that is typically just hearing like kind of one message about like, hey, get it cheap, or they're hearing it all over. They're hearing it in the housing world too. It's like, get it cheap and
Lowball them. Just offer
yeah.
them 20 cents on the dollar and they're going to be so happy to, like, no, that's not. Yeah, you got to be more creative.
And that works, but it works only for a percentage of the buyers. If you have, once you get, as I said, once you get into the development game, there's so many more things you can do and really make it an even bigger win-win for everyone, because in that case, the seller just had to wait an extra. How long did it take to upzone that property?
The stuff that I do typically takes a year. So the seller has to be willing to give you a long contract on it. But if they're getting a premium, and if you can clearly demonstrate to them that they're getting a premium over what their property is worth, then it becomes worthwhile for them to wait.
Exactly right. And chances are they didn't get it last year and or last week and are looking to sell it. They probably have owned it for 20 years already. So what's a 21st year to hold on to it? It's not a big deal.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Very cool. So now you do this, you build these up. I love the concept of actually keeping them. Now that sounds great, but don't you need equity in each of these deals? So you're building the equity to the land game, for example, that you then contribute in, or does your spec deal become your cash machine to produce the profits that you then roll over into the other deals so you can buy and hold them? Because the banks are not going to give you 100% loan to value usually, or loan to purchase price and so on. So you do need some cash into those deals. Where does that cash typically come from?
So that's a great question. So it can come from spec houses that I built. It can come from my other operating businesses, right? So I've got other businesses that generate sort of one-time profits, our software and education business, other things that we do. So I channel that money as equity into deals. But then again, because we can be creative with how we purchase land, I can achieve a greater leverage on my development than if I just go and buy a property and put 20 or 25% down. So I mean, just as a simple example, Let's say I want to buy a duplex in my market, and that duplex costs $500,000. I'm going to go to a bank, and the bank is going to say, we want to see, let's just keep it simple. They're going to say, we want to see 20% down. And I'm going to have to bring $100,000 in cash as my down payment to buy that duplex. But if I find a piece of land and I can buy it for $40,000 and I want to build a duplex on it, I can bring that piece of land to the bank and I can say, I'm bringing this piece of land that I own free and clear and it's worth $100,000. So now lend me the construction money that I need at 100%. The bank doesn't care, most banks. If you're talking to a bank that does care, you're talking to the wrong bank.
Right.
The banks that I deal with don't care that I paid $40,000 for that piece of land. They're going to treat it like $100,000 piece of equity. So I'm able to achieve far more leverage if I execute the deals correctly by doing ground up development than if I'm just buying something and putting 20, 25% down on it.
And then in an ideal world, the construction cost is not $400,000, but the construction cost might only be $300,000.
Exactly. And so I'm building another 20% sweat equity. So think about it. You're exactly right. So now I've got $40,000 that I spend on land, $300,000 that I spend on construction that the bank fully funded, and now I'm into it for $340 plus closing costs, cost of money, right? So let's be conservative and say I'm into it for $375. Now it's worth $500,000.
Right.
So I created $125,000 in instant, not instant, it takes time to build, right? But like I created $125,000 in equity and wealth on my balance sheet by building and not buying.
And at this point, you go to the bank, the construction loan is done, you refinance into a long-term buy and hold, buy and hold thing. You get the 40 out because you only need 100 in, so you have your money in there, and you basically now have done a deal that you temporarily put 40 grand in, got your 40 back in, you have no money in the deal, and it's a cash flowing deal if the numbers obviously are calculated right.
That's correct. Now look, that doesn't always happen, right? The multifamily projects that we do, that I have to build by commercial code, like the $14 million project we broke ground on 2 weeks ago, we're leaving money tied up. We're going to leave money tied up into it for a couple of years because the numbers are tighter. But a lot of the deals we are executing exactly the way we just talked about, and they're great. And if I am leaving cash tied up in the deal long term, it's not the end of the world because that cash is earning me a good rate of return via cash flow. And then on top of that, I'm getting depreciation. On top of that, I'm getting amortization. You know, on the $14 million, you know, that one's got like a $9 million note. On a $9 million note, how much amortization how much equity do my tenants create for me every year just by paying down the note, right? It's phenomenal. Yeah. So there are other benefits to holding these projects long term.
No, absolutely.
And I like the idea of doing the work once and getting paid forever. Like flipping doesn't excite me. It just doesn't. Like we make good money on spec houses and it doesn't do anything for me. I get more excited about, you know, that I don't get excited about the one-time big check. I get excited by the small check that's going to come to me for the rest of my life.
Right. And this is very much financial wisdom right here. This is what I've been preaching forever. This is why when we teach, any money we make from the teaching business gets rolled into multifamily in our case. Any money we make from our own land flipping, so we actively flip. Our flipping is like your spec homes. Flipping, I love the flipping part of it, but I know that someday I'm going to stop flipping. Like I'm not going to be 100 years old and still flipping land, right? So what we're using the flipping for, even though I fell in love with it when we discovered it and when we executed it and optimized it and perfected it and things like that, I love the big check coming in. So we're a little different there, but but I always look at it as a means to an end. It's a very wonderful means that I enjoy a lot, and I love the hunt, and I love the check coming in, I love that success feeling and so on, and it's dopamine everywhere and so on. But at the same time, and once we stop it, I'll probably miss it. But its purpose is not just to exist and produce cash. Its purpose is for the cash to be rolled into other pieces. Now, we don't build up from scratch, so we buy existing multifamilies, but currently we have 91 units in the Dallas-Fort Worth area under contract. It's a distressed deal where somebody had $14 million in it, and they're selling it to us for $9.75 million. So it's a great smoking deal. And we syndicate those deals sometimes, but even on the syndication, we're more and more looking to not syndicate for 5 years, but syndicate with investors that say, hey, I don't want to turn my money from project to project to project. I want to get in a project where I get an 8, 9, 10% preferred return every year. I get a really nice cash flow. I don't have to worry about anything. And 20 years from now or 15 years from now, when perhaps we perhaps exit out of that building and then move it into some other building and do it again and again and again. Right? Yeah. So I think we're speaking the same language here. You just in a different angle of it, which is actually beautiful to see, because not everyone has to do what we do. They can do what you do. That's beautiful.
I want to be in position one day to decide to not work and have steady income coming in. I mean, I'm in a position now to not work. I've been in a position now to not work for a long time, but I don't know what I would do with my time. But I want that flexibility down the road, right? I want that freedom down the road.
Plus, you're exactly 10 years younger than I am, so therefore, I know how it feels. 10 years ago, I was like, no, I'm in the prime, and I still feel like I'm in my prime. Yeah. But as I'm now in my 50s, I was like, hey, you know what? Eventually, that those things need to be all organized and so that you can. It's a beautiful feeling being able to wake up in the morning knowing that if you just decide to stop, you can. Right, and that's just a game changer, particularly with the background that you have of having stood in bread lines. With the background that I have, I never stood in bread lines, but I grew up in a small town, simple kind of life. My dad's a middle school teacher, and so I saw the richer kids in the neighborhood driving all the cars and driving the motorcycles thing, and I was never able to be part of that. So it's a completely different ballgame what you went through, but it created that kind of like desire to build something, make something, and be in a position that you can have all those things if you want to. Interestingly enough, once you can have it, you don't necessarily want them, but that's a different kind of story. And
that could be a longer conversation.
Yes, exactly right. And then you, but it's nice to know that you can. And I think that gives a lot of peace of mind.
It's freedom.
Yeah, it's freedom.
What's better in life than just having optionality and just having lots of options? I mean, isn't that the true definition of freedom? Is being able to use your time how you please?
Yeah.
That's ultimately, I think, what anybody wants, right? And so the money is a tool for that. The real estate, to me, I truly, I genuinely enjoy development, like the process of creation and seeing the vision come true. So I wouldn't say a real estate is just a tool for me to create freedom, because I think I would do development even if I was a billionaire. I'd still develop real estate. But ultimately, that's what this is, right? All the businesses that we have, they are a vehicle for us to have optionality in life and to have time freedom. And even if we choose to use that time freedom now to work as hard as we ever have, we're doing it for our families, and we're doing it because we get to do stuff that we love.
Yeah.
And that makes us very lucky.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I can totally relate to your point about creating something. Now, we use in our company, the Kolbe test. To everyone in our company does the Kolbe test. And the Kolbe test measures your aptitude or like your natural tendencies in four different areas. The first one is how much detail do you need in your life before you take action? The second one, how organized are you in your life before you need action? The third one is just how much action do you like to take, generally speaking? And the fourth one, though, is one that basically says, or do you envision solutions, or you actually like with your working with your hands? And the fourth one,
is it Colby?
yeah,
Colby
Kolbe,
test?
yeah, Kolbe. It's a fantastic test. You take the Kolbe A, costs like $50. Go to Kolbe Corporation, so on, and Google it and find out. And the point is, everyone in our team does that, because if somebody's like a 9, 8, 2, whatever, 2, 3 or so, that means they're very, very organized, very, very detailed, but they won't take any action until they have it researched and organized. Well, that is not necessarily the right person in a the right person in a role where they have to take a lot of action, because they will be paralyzed if they haven't researched and organized it. At the same time, though, there's people that have no research and no organization but take a lot of action, and they're like the mavericks. They're like out there creating havoc and are disorganized. The fourth part we never pay much attention to in our company, because we flip land. And with land, you don't have to use your hands. You're not building anything. But you can tell immediately that I would bet that if you do that, that your fourth score is probably very high, because you like building that. And even though my score is not very high in the third one, we only fixed and flipped one house ever. Like, we only fixed and flipped one house. Actually, not true. We wholesaled that house. We only wholesaled like 10 houses. But one of the houses we sold to a friend, who then fixed it up and sold it. And to this day, every time I drive by that house, it fills me with a little bit of pride to have been part of that remodel, because it was an absolute horrific house before, and it became an absolute beautiful house afterwards. So I can relate to you from the point of view, and that is me with a 2 or so in that score, which meaning I envision solutions, but I can't even put a nail in the wall. Like, literally, I hire somebody, I bring somebody in to hang up our paintings. I can't even do it. I mean, it can, because
I bet you could. You're German. You're process oriented.
I'm process oriented, but that's a different thing. So I literally, I mean, I can hang up the painting. It's going to take me an hour, and behind the painting, there's going to be 10 holes in order to get it done right. But that doesn't mean I can't manage a project, because we just rehabilitated a multifamily unit and we spent $3 million on 94 units, getting that thing from crappy to beautiful again. And it fills me with pride, but it's a different kind of a person. Sure. It is rewarding, but it's definitely a different kind of person to want to do that again and again and again. So we went to that construction piece, and I don't want to do that level of construction ever again, but you take a lot of joy out of it. So it's just, the thing is, to the audience, really telling the audience, if you're considering that, ask yourself if you would enjoy it. And based on whether you enjoy it, that's what you want to go into. And so my daughter would love it and enjoy it, because she's very much into seeing stuff becoming, right? And you're apparently too. So it's really cool. So now let's shift gears into the next thing. I know it fits from a point of view of creation, but what in the world do you do with a software? What kind of software did you create? What are you doing there? What does it help? What does it do? And how did that come about?
So when I got into real estate, I literally built the first iteration of the software for myself. I needed a tool that would tell me what to pay for deals, and I needed something that would help me. At the time, I was using private money to buy houses, renovate them, refi out of them. And so I needed, at the time, something that would clearly help me communicate with lenders and get them off the sidelines to give me money. So the first iteration of the software, that's what it was. It was a simple deal analyzer, and then it spit out a nice lender presentation that said, hey, Mr. Lender, here's the deal. Here's what you're going to earn on the deal. Here's a little bit about me. And so the software business started really kind of by accident, because I needed something for myself. I made it available back in 2010, 2011 to a couple of other investors, and they said, whoa, this is cool. You should sell this. And I said, I'm a real estate guy. I don't know the first thing about building software, selling software. but I gave it a shot. And since then, there's a free version of it's called Rehab Validator. There's a free version of it. There's a premium version. Free version lets you do analysis. Premium version lets you put together marketing materials if you're a wholesaler, lets you put together lender presentations. There's a full project management suite, sales comps. We just rolled out rental comps nationwide. So you can click a button and it'll for any property, any number of bedrooms, it'll give you rental comps in any market and show you exactly what your property will rent for. Um, we have all kinds of data now in the software, but started off as an experiment back in 2009, 2010. And since then, we've probably given away, I mean, easily 500,000 versions of the free software to people. And we've had, you know, at this point, we've cycled 100,000+ paid users through the system as well. We don't have
Wow.
100,000 now, right? People come, people go, unfortunately.
Of course.
You've got a software, you've got a really good
Yeah, don't we
software.
all wish they would all stay? Yes, yes. But
Yeah, but the point I'm making is we've been able to help a tremendous amount of people since I started the software by accident. We've been able to help an incredible amount of people do deals, make money, take their business to the next level. And the evolution of the software has really just evolved as my real estate business has evolved. So as as my needs as a developer have grown, I've rolled out project management suite. So we've got the ability to you can click a button, build a construction budget, store bids, schedule your projects. There's in-app accounting. You can press a button and create lender draw funding requests inside the software. We use the software to pitch bankers on construction and permanent funding. So we've just in-house secured tens of millions of dollars worth of loans with the software, and our clients they have to be at nine figures at this point. So yeah, it's I think my experience is a lesson to anybody that don't overthink something. Like I started this business completely by accident, and it's a multiple seven-figure business. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people, and I didn't know anything about coding. I didn't know anything about building software. I didn't know anything about marketing online, building websites, nothing. I just did it and figured it out. But Jack, if I had hired a consultant at the time back in 2009 and brought in a consultant and I would have said, hey, Jack Bosch, you're a business consulting guru. Do a market analysis. Should I start a software business for real estate investors? 10 out of 10 consultants would have said, oh, well, no, there's a lot of competition out there. There's already a lot of products. You haven't raised any capital. You don't have any money. We think it's a terrible idea. Don't do it. 'Cause that's what they would have said. Because it's true. I didn't have any money. I didn't know anything about software. I didn't know anything about building a business. I just didn't overthink it. I didn't know what I didn't know. And it's been a pretty damn big success because I didn't overthink it and I just got started.
yeah, sometimes, particularly, sometimes if you have an idea and you need to, and I think it's feasible, you just need to go for it. I mean, there should be a market for it. But whether there's a lot of competition or not, and you think about, you see like every once in a while you see a brand coming up again, a new fashion brand. I mean, is there not enough competition in the fashion brand, in the fashion world? Everyone, like lots of people want to become fashion designers and things like that. But does it mean that you can't succeed in that industry? No. You just need to be more creative, different, have an angle that actually people can use, have in the software world, have something that's actually really user-friendly, and because you don't need 100,000 active paying customers to be successful. I don't know what your software costs, but if you have somebody pays you 100, 200 bucks a month and something like that, with basically 500 customers, you have $1 million business, right? And now the question comes, how do you get to 500 customers, or actually 400, 450 customers at 200 bucks a month? How do you get to 450 customers with that software? And now it becomes an executable and a solvable problem because that means you somehow need to get 40 customers a month over 1 year and you're there. Right?
Yeah,
So
it's not, none of it is rocket science. I think you need to create something that actually helps people. You need to have great customer support. That's something that we've been religious about ever since I started this business, is we have American based. They're in my office. We have full-time support people and they're phenomenal. And we have very strict standards about how quickly we reply to people and how thoroughly we reply to people. And we've prided ourselves on really kind of undercharging and over delivering as long as we've been in business. And at the end of the day, I think if you're focused on delivering real value to people, you'll do well.
yeah, no, absolutely, 100% agree. Now, how can people find more about you and about the software and so on?
Yeah, so if you go to rehabvaluator.com, hold on, I gotta change shirts because this is like our company shirt. And every time I'm on the podcast, you actually can't see anything other than the stupid house, and the name of
You
the
gotta get
software is there at the
man.
bottom. We got to redesign the whole thing because now I'm doing something weird and I'm lifting up my shirt. So if people are listening to this on an actual podcast, just so they can visualize it, it looks like I'm hiking my shirt up above my belly button, and now it's super weird.
That's all right. Nothing wrong with a little bit of weirdness. So very simply, we can put an overlay on there or something. It's Rehab Valuator. So it's like the word valuation, valuator, rehabvaluator.com. Right, and
Yeah, rehabvaluator.com. Yeah.
check out the free version, upgrade to the paid version. Again, I know I've been a supporter of this software for many, many years. We know it. We have been friends for a long time, and I hear nothing but great news and great feedback about you and the software and you as a person anyways. Like, again, we know each other for a long time. So with that said, I want to cut in on just one subject matter for just a couple of minutes, and that is immigrants. Immigrants to the United States. I always say, I put reels about that out there, and this is like that we have, in a way, I'm an immigrant, you're an immigrant, that we have a certain advantage over US born people. And the advantage is that we just simply, from my point of view, we come here with something to prove. We come here with something with fired up, and it's almost like, particularly in the pre-internet world, it's almost like you get to have a brand new restart because whatever you did before, it doesn't matter. Now, in my case, I didn't do anything bad, but I came here just when email was just coming up, right? That's when I came in. Our email was popular already, but social media did not exist yet. So you could take on whichever persona in a way you want it to be, and you just get, like, instead of being tied down by your relationships, by your friends, and what they think of you, and the garbage that they put on you sometimes. Oh, well, who do you think you are, and stuff like that. You just come into a new place in a new world, and you can just start from scratch. Do you see it the same, or how do you see it? Do you think as immigrants we have an advantage?
I've always said that. I think first generation immigrants are the most dangerous people out there in the good way. I don't mean like we're criminals. I mean, like, we are. I mean, I guess some of us are. I don't know, but like, we just look around. Like, I see this in our students. I see this in our clients. Like, first generation immigrants are doers. Like, they're a lot less likely to overthink stuff and never do anything. Like, yeah, we come here. I think part of it is we have something to prove. I think part of it is that we've already done something insanely hard, which is start over in another country, have to learn a new language, have to adjust to living in a new society. So we've already done something insanely difficult, and other things don't really scare us after that. Right? So I think that's part of it. And I think part of it is that we come here for a reason, because this is the land of opportunity. And we recognize that opportunity. And we come here to create a better life for ourselves. And so then we actually take action and do it. right? All at the same time while appreciating what we have here and not squandering it. I think so many people that are born in the US have no idea how good they have it, have absolutely no idea how good they have it here, and they don't have the intellectual curiosity to travel abroad and see the rest of the world, to see just how bad a lot of the rest of the world is in terms of quality of life, level of corruption, upward mobility, opportunity, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And I actually tell people, like, when an American-born American, like a natural-born American, comes and says, like, well, Jack, well, it's not my fault that I'm born here. It's like, no, it's not your fault. It's your blessing that you've been here. But you can artificially create that same environment by, number one, moving away from the comfort zone of all your buddies and all your things that you already know. And sometimes that doesn't have to be moving to a different state. Like, you can move, like, it sometimes shocks me, particularly being in the real estate space, how little the difference in rent is between renting in a bad area and renting in a good area. It's sometimes a couple of $100s. But if you get, but like, for example, Phoenix, Arizona, South Phoenix is heavily lower income and things like that. And Northern Phoenix is not so, it's like higher income. But the rent is not dramatically different. You still pay $1,200 for an apartment in South Phoenix, and you pay $1,500 for a little bit smaller apartment, but in a really good school district, in a good area. And it's like, go just move from the bad area where you grew up, perhaps, and where all your relationships, where you feel comfortable, move to the other part of town and start making some relationships there.
It's not even that, right? I mean, yeah, I agree, that can be impactful, but more impactful for people is just changing their circle of friends.
Yeah.
Like, your friends probably grew with a bunch of losers, and you need to drop them. And just surrounding yourself by a different set of people that think differently can be transformational for you.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's hard to do if you're kind of tied in that circle. So sometimes you need to geographically remove yourself from that location into a different location, but then don't move from, I don't know, from Phoenix to LA and then find the exact same neighborhood style, because then you'll end up with the exact same kind of people, just with different names, and instead of being in Phoenix and LA. Move to a different part of town, go to a different school, go to a different environment, go to different clubs, find different kind of people, find the kind of people you want to become, and be okay with being the oddball out for a while until you learn the rules of the game that group of people have. And because you can't, you can't not change. If you kind of continue to be the same person in that new environment, you'll be spit out of that environment eventually. So the only other way is you'll have to change, you'll have to adapt, you'll have to become more like them, but that's what you want in the first place, right? So you can mimic this kind of thing. You don't have to leave to another country and learn a different culture and learn a different, I would say, like, you and I, we look like the average American, but we're not. Like, to this day, I came here at age 27, to this day, I'm very much aware that America, and white America I'm talking about, as the closest looking to me, obviously, is a completely different culture than Germany. Like, the way you go about everything is different, and it doesn't happen overnight to get used to that, right? But again, you don't have to do that even to a different country. It's enough to move from the south to the north and north to the south, or even across, or even across town. So, and go try it. It's gonna be uncomfortable. You're gonna have sad nights, and then you're like, what the heck am I doing? But you're gonna grow out of that process, and you're gonna start seeing opportunities that you never saw before.
Yeah, well, my favorite quote is probably, entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can live the rest of your life the way most people can't.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And you gotta make sacrifices.
100%. Right.
Yeah.
Perfect word for the ending, guys. So let's wrap this up. I think that's a wrap. With that said, guys, as always, thank you very much. Daniil, for being here with us. And also, not as always, but thank you for being with us. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Give us that 5-star review if you're listening on iTunes. Give us that thumbs up and the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube, and share it with your friends. And thank you, Daniil. And that's a wrap.